Okay, so thank you everybody for assembling here today. And we are here in response to a huge shift that has happened in my companies and the inventions of my technologies, which are cooperatively with my two jewelers, Fred Shute and Chris Paul. So I've been in the media for 20 years. My name is DavidSereda's. My first media appearance was with the legendary Art Bell, who had over 30 million listeners on the first night of the first show I did with him in the year 2000. And then also with Jeff Rentz, who had over 1 million listeners in those days in the year 2000. It's amazing to think the year 2000 is now a long time ago. And, you know, I've been practicing meditation daily since I was 18 years old. Before I was 18, I was introduced to meditation, and I did practice it with many different incredible teachers who are too numerous to mention here today. But my intention was to transform the state of awareness of being into a much, much higher level of awareness and experience, because all we have here as human beings is our personal experience of the way we perceive and the way we react to our realities. And this experience can drastically be shifted for the better through the practice of breath, the practice of very pure harmonic sounds, which can be words or it can be tones and pitches, which translate into very, very precise frequencies. And frequencies, as I've learned, are the manifestation of perfectly measured temples. And what I mean by temples are everything from the Great Pyramid and all of the pyramids that have occurred in the history on Earth, and the most sacred of sacred temples, such as the Holy of Holies, which not only existed as the cube in Solomon's temple, but also we found that Mary Magdalene in her village had her own Holy of Holies, and so did many, many ancient gods and goddesses. And this temple, this cubic temple, had a precise measurement, because what I discovered is the measurement of a temple is a wavelength. And a wavelength is inversely a frequency, a precise frequency. So a lot of people talk about like raising our vibration or raising our frequency or changing our frequency. But if you remember when you were a kid, or when I was a kid, because I was born in 1961, I'm in my 59th year right now of my 59 journeys around the sun. I'm in the middle of 59. And so when you're tuning on a radio, and you're trying to find a song or a station, duly noted is that most of what is out there in the world of frequencies is static, nothing. So hence the reason for very precise wavelength frequencies. And then you hit your radio station and you hear your song and you're feeling the emotions of that song, and you might even get up dancing. So what I'm saying is, you can't mess around with frequency. You can't just pick any old frequency and say, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, pick any frequency I want. And a lot of the healing devices out there and pulsed electromagnetic field devices do this. They just pick any frequency they want because they think, oh, that might be good. Oh, that might be good. But that's not what I do. What I do is I've spent years and years studying physics. I took physics in school, and when I remember coming to my physics teacher, and I presented to him a time dilation theory, something that actually proved how time modulates and dilates. But this was grade 12 physics, and when I handed it to my teacher, who would have had a bachelor's degree in physics, he said, what is this? This is the most advanced, one of Einstein's most advanced theories, you know, the theory of time dilation. And so what what ends up happening is that when you understand the profundity of frequency, is that it's not only to get you to the right channel of existence, but frequency is a portal to time. And time, as I've discovered it in my own studies in physics, because I continued my studies in physics long after high school, and I ended up working for the most legendary physicist in the history of the development of atomic weapons and nuclear fusion, a benign form of nuclear energy, and the detection of buried landmines and hidden explosives. I worked very closely with this group called the Advanced Physics Corporation, and I learned everything about nuclear fusion and how it worked. And I even took, extended courses in the mathematics of how these things work. And so when I say the word frequency, for me, frequency is not just let's raise our frequencies, because as you know, and I noted before, even when radio astronomers are tuning to look for signals in the heavens amongst the constellation groups of stars, most of what they're looking at is noise, meaning nothing. Nothing important is happening in this noise band. So that's why I noticed that the God of the prophets and the gods and goddesses of multiple religions had very specific measurements for the temples. And when I was looking at the measurements of the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple, which is 20 by 20 by 20 cubits, and I confirmed in the book of Ezekiel that God uses the royal cubit, which is expressed as a symbol of the elbow to hand and the hand breadth, as a complete symbol to equal the royal cubit. And then you have to determine, because the inch was the primary measurement of the ancient people, from ancient Babylonia to ancient Egypt to how we measure today. And when you understand the dimensions of a temple, or setting up a frequency that is very sacred, that's not going to lead you to this abject white noise in the universe or meaningless frequency sounds, what you find out is every time you'll see the same measurement. And when I determined the hunt for the true royal cubic to inch conversion was the most accurate, not in the rulers that people used to measure in the ancient world, because the rulers in Egypt varied between 20.6 and 20.8 something inches per royal cubit. And I knew the rulers weren't accurate. So what would be the most accurate thing to rely on would be the masterpiece, the Great Pyramid itself. And when I determined, relying on Peter Lemaisurier's work, who wrote The Great Pyramid Decoded, that the Great Pyramid had the most repeatable and reliable royal cubit to inch conversion, and that everybody else was just messing around, I could determine everything and prove that the Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually the Great Pyramid of God and the God of all the prophets, because it had the same precise measurements within it that were contained in the most holy temple that preceded the arrival of the Hebrew and the Jewish people, preceded them. That this cube called the Holy of Holies, the most sacred Holy of Holies, which is the home of the Ark of the Covenant, which is inside of the Ark of the Covenant are the 12 staffs for the 12 tribes of Israel. This system pre-existed the Hebrews of using the staffs. If you go into all of the temples in the Egyptian, the surviving temples of the ancient Egyptian world, you'll see that everyone has a staff. Every god or goddess has the staff. And the staff has to be this precise length, because the staff, as a coiled antenna, and we know Moses' staff was coiled because the Bible tells us that it had a coiled serpent. And the serpent coiled is the symbol, not that Moses walked around with a staff with a snake wrapped around it, but that Moses walked around with a staff that was coiled for the purpose of it being a transmitter. Because when Nikola Tesla discovered how if you coiled copper wire and you ran a power source through it, you were giving birth to radio waves. And radio waves you could tag on music, the human voice, pictures, and media eventually. And now we have the internet. So it came to my attention and understanding that the staff of Moses and the staff of all those who preceded him, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden in the lost books of Genesis, when Adam and Eve are expelled after making multiple failures in their ability to recognize the difference between the supreme God and the deceiver God, they needed their staff to telecommunicate with God. But that staff had to be a very precise measurement so that its frequency would be the right frequency. And without going into a huge presentation on how I arrived at the perfect staff length and the perfect frequencies with which to transmit for the benefit of the practice of spiritual, the activation of the spiritual light body, I can tell you that anybody who doesn't know what they're doing in the realm of calculating frequencies and is handing out subjects frequencies that they're just making up in their head, most likely you're going to get tuned to nothing but static in the universe. And that's exactly who my former partner David Wong is. He's a con man. He's a really good con man because he conned me. I've been doing this, I've been practicing meditation every day for 40 years. And there's people, I just met a gentleman yesterday who's been doing it every day for 50 years. And the benefits of it are tremendous, tremendous. But why is it that Jesus says in Mark 6, verse 8, that when he disperses the disciples, that he said, you can forget everything. No money in your purse, no bread, no script, just your staff. That means he's putting absolute importance on the staff, and that you need the staff just as Adam and Eve did when they left the Garden of Eden to telecommunicate with God. And then part of it says, well, why do we need a staff to communicate with God when we can just meditate and go into our heart center? And there is an effectiveness there. But why did this supremely enlightened master tell everyone of his apostles that you need to have your staff with you? Why did Moses have the staff with him at all times? He never went anywhere without it, the Bible tells us. I mean, it's not a crutch. It's not something you lean on because you're tired of hiking. This staff is so profound, and the way I've calculated its final measurement is so profound that as you work with it, and you work with your wand, and you work with your coils, all these technologies that have been given to me, and the mathematics and the frequencies that are running through them have been given to me by God. And that because I want to, and I know a lot of you are here as distributors and practitioners, I want you to start with to understand that when I make a calculation and deliver a frequency, I'm not doing it off the top of my head. I'm measuring the wavelengths of all the 9 planets in the solar system, all the wavelengths of the most sacred temples on earth. And when I cross cultures, and I took my wife and my 2 children, Astaria and Alira, and Astaria's, playing right over here, you'll probably meet her in a few minutes, who is 4 years old today. We went to Chaco Canyon, the first First Nation Native American true city civilization in America. Massive buildings, incredible temples and structures, these beautiful stone-walled circles where they would hold incredible ceremonies, all temples lined to perfect magnetic north, south, east, and west. And we go into this one temple, and I'm using a Leica laser, and I measure the diameter of this one sacred circle temple, and it's a perfect Holy of Holies. I mean, perfect. it's not 98% accurate, it's 99.99% accurate to the Holy of Holies using the math that I'm using. Because God said to make the Holy of Holies 20 by 20 by 20 cubits. But then, you see, when you see a circular temple and you understand how energy moves magnetically in a circle made out of stones, which are semiconductor materials, you know that this wave is spinning in the circle at the speed of light, because that's how electromagnetic energy moves. And that we're not used to seeing waves hold in one space. We're used to seeing electromagnetic waves escape with their known velocity of the speed of light. But the way we calculate a resonant electromagnetic frequency is we take the speed of light in the same unit of measure that we measure the wavelength. So the wavelength, which means, for example, if I take the circumference of the Earth and I do it in metric, then I have to have the speed of light in metric divided by the circumference of the Earth in metric, and I arrive at the frequency. So I did the same thing with all of the temples. But to my astonishment, when I went worldwide, I kept seeing so many temples with the same precise measurements, and therefore the same frequencies would arrive. And I found this series of ascending frequencies that were like light activation stepping stones to slowly increase the frequency and the vibration of the human being coming up to the crown chakra and illuminating the top of your own inner pyramid awareness energy field. So when I calculate frequencies, they're done precisely, mathematically. And the smaller the unit of measure you use to measure the speed of light, so I have to resolve the speed of light in inches instead of miles or kilometers, because those are way too long. And I'm measuring wavelengths that are the structures themselves. And then I discovered what is the ultimate frequency octave. An octave is like, okay, if you're on your piano, we all listen to music, and I hit the A note at 440 hertz. Pythagorean octave, which is what musicians use today, is divided by 2 to go an octave down. So I take 440 hertz A, then divided by 2 is 220 hertz, divided by 2 is 110 hertz. You see what I mean? And hertz are waves per second. So that's what frequency is. It's how many waves per second. And then if I want to go higher in my octaves, I take 440 times 2, and I'm at 880. So all of us, all over the planet, have been listening to music that is attuned to the Pythagorean music scale with 12 basic, tones, 7 tones. With flats and sharps, we get 12 chromatic tones. And those 12 chromatic tones ascend and descend into the octaves that span the range of where most music goes. So all of the emotions, all of the spiritual feelings that music invokes in you is because of those precise frequencies. But in my spiritual awakening, which has been going on for many, many years now, I realized in tuning the dial, what about the spaces between these notes? There's a huge amount of frequency there, so that we're missing. And what about all these other frequencies in here that nobody's ever heard? What would you feel energetically if you could hear those? Well, there was an ancient mystic musician named Orpheus. Orpheus is kind of like Morpheus. So you think in the Greek system, Morpheus is the god of dreams. Well, Orpheus was the early god of music for the Greeks. And he traveled to Egypt and came back with this superior music scale that was so much better than the Greek music scale that apparently animals would lay down and go into trance, violent animals would become peaceful, birds, the waters would become still and stop moving, Orpheus's music scale was so profound, it enraged Zeus, the mythic god of the creation in the Greek system, because his children, Athena, Hermes, and Apollo, created the birth of the music system that we have today. And eventually Pythagoras would tune that to a far more profound level. So Pythagoras used times 2 as an octave. And I said, well, there's all these other frequencies. So I calculated all the wavelengths, speed of light by all the wavelengths going up the side of the Great Pyramid to the top. And I found this profound music scale. And I decided the whole pyramid was built on the golden ratio, all of it. So I would use the golden ratio as an octave, which is less than times 2. You see, the golden ratio is times 1.61803398887, which is less than times 2. So I could get more musical tones within the bandwidth of the human acoustical system, where we start hearing, and we start hearing at 20 hertz, very profound number. Why is 20 hertz so profound? Because the wavelength of the closest planet to our sun, Mercury, is 20 hertz. Isn't that interesting that we cognitively hear at the wavelength frequency of the closest planet to the sun? And guess whom the closest planet to the sun represents? The god Hermes. Hermes is Mercury, and he's one of the fathers of the early music system. And why would it be that our ears start hearing at the frequency of the planet Mercury? This was all designed. What I'm saying is this is no accident. And so when I took the frequencies of all the wavelengths of all the 9 planets and used the golden ratio as an octave, I created perfect music scales out of every one of the planets. And that's part of what you're using in your frequency list for healing, because each planet has a frequency at its equator, including the octaves, that correspond to the 5 major brainwaves that we have. From deep delta, the deep delta planets are Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and then Pluto is a gamma planet, just like our moon. So when the moon is full, the reason we can't sleep is it activates the gamma part of the brain, which is the super active part of the brain, and it does that for a reason. There's a purpose for all of these shifts and all of the planetary frequencies. And so when I calculate frequencies for your staffs, for your wands, and for your coils, I'm not messing around. This is my first point I'm trying to make here today. So 2.5 years ago, a young gentleman named David Wong decided he wanted to help me. And I already had a thriving business. And okay, you can have this water here, baby. Okay, so when somebody comes along and says they want to help you, and they hijack your YouTube channel that I created 15 to 20 years ago, because I've appeared in the media for 20 years. I've been on Fox News, many times on Fox News, the History Channel, Discovery Channel, the Learning Channel, the Eco Channels, Gaia TV, CNN, Anderson Cooper, CNN, other shows, Peter Jennings special on UFOs, Art Bell Radio, George Norrie Radio. I've been on Shirley MacLaine's radio show, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, Late Night in the Midlands, Mike Vera. There are so many shows. Alan Handelman, If It Rocks, Alan Eisenberg. I mean, there's so many wonderful people that have interviewed me for the past 20 years. And so I have a business, it's thriving, and this man named David Wong comes along and says, I want to help you. And I'm like, well, I don't really like dealing with money. That movie called Lord of the Rings, the little ring. And if somebody gets it in their hands and they feel the power, and if they're not a person who's not ruled by power as a symbol, they're the right person to hold the ring. Well, I handed the ring to the wrong person, a person who, when you hand the steering wheel to your company, and your name that has existed for 20 years in the media, and lectures I've given in person to as many as 700 people live and received standing ovations, and you're handing your name and your likeness over to a kid basically who has not been able to go into profound states of meditation on his own, and somehow he comes into my company. He did a good job at marketing in the beginning, and then slowly, I don't even want to call him David Wong because his name was Dennis Wong when we met. And then before that, it was Yak Wong. And we don't really know this guy's name. He's transmorphic. He's a shapeshifter. He shapeshifts himself so that he can gain your, what you think is your trust, but it's not really your trust. This man is going to eat you alive. And he comes in and he slowly starts putting his name on these frequencies that I've calculated, that have taken me years and years and years to do. You know, I've been calculating frequencies for 15 years now. And then he states on this video that he hijacks on my YouTube channel called DavidSereda's, my website that I created, and locks me out of my own website and steals the passcodes and destroys 15 years of my videos on my own YouTube channel, and slowly starts removing me from existence in my own businesses and websites, and puts his name on my frequencies and then renames them because he knows how profound the experiences people are having with healing, with altering their consciousness and awakening the creative insight process within their minds so that they can see things for themselves. And he says, wow, people are having great results with this. I think I'll put my name on this frequency that David Sereda created, and I'll slowly, oh, she took your money. Oh my God. Well, we'll have to do something about that. And that's what happened to me. Somebody stole my money. That's funny that my daughter just said that. She's 4. So David Wong comes into my company, and what does he do? He goes, well, I'm in control of all the money, because David Sereda didn't want to be in control of the money. And I think I'll take this product here, gem lasers, and I'll make them out of plastic instead of silver. And I'll use cheap glass beads and call them gems. And I won't even use David Sereda's fusion energy generator to infuse these gems with any frequencies, because people don't care. They just want something that looks pretty, and I'll shine nice lights on them and people will buy them. So people bought them, and they said, what are these? These are made out of plastic. These are garbage. Well, that's what they looked like before you bought them. Now, when I made them with Fred Shute, who I co-designed this beautiful cap with golden ratio bands, sort of circular bands engraved in pure silver, and we infused the entire thing with the gems inside of my mini nuclear fusion generator process to put vibrations and activate the gems. That was all gone. And I said, this man has no integrity. He's giving people, he's using my name to market DavidSereda's and using my name all over the internet to bring people in. And then he's going to take my products and make them out of garbage. And then I started to design a new wand with him, because our jeweler was having problems with his hands were locking up, because all of your wands are handmade. They're pure, the purest, highest quality German lab-grown rubies, and we use those because people can't afford real rubies that size. No way. There's very few people that can afford rubies the size that we're using. If they were real, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to get rubies that size. So we sourced the best rubies that are lab-grown, and our jewelers confirm with me under the microscope that our rubies are everything identical to a ruby under a microscope. So David Wong takes my design and he starts to go to work on it without telling me. Meanwhile, I'm redesigning the wand myself, but I'm not telling him what my new design plans are. And then suddenly he announces he's improved the wand. What do you mean you improved the wand? You don't even know what you're doing. You don't even know how to calculate resistance. you don't even know how to calculate a sacred length to the coil wire on the inside because you're not a mathematician. And even if you were a mathematician, you couldn't do what I do. And then he took out the tourmaline core, and we actually passed the electrode through the tourmaline core. And you have to use this highly expensive drill press to drill holes in the tourmaline, good quality tourmaline, because when the tourmaline gets pulsed through the piezoelectric effect, which is when you pulse any semiconductive material, which is what gems are, and the mineral materials that are composites in the gems, they will emit an auric field. There's an incredible physicist named Konstantin Korotkov who invented the GDV aura camera system, who was an early friend of mine. And he showed me his photographs of the auras of gemstones. I was so blown away that every gem had a different auric field when applying frequencies to the gem, and they were using 1,000 hertz frequencies. I said, oh my God, I've got to add gems in the circuit of a PEMF device, pulse electromagnetic field device. So we use tourmaline in the core and rubies on the face, and we have star coils behind the face. So now I have redesigned the wand myself, not knowing that David Wong was going to steal that invention. And all I wanted from him was a new container for the outside. And I only wanted my sacred flower of life on the side of it. And he used one of those. And he first said it was gold plated, which it isn't. It's just a satin finish. And he's not using real lab grown gems. He's using cheap junk. And I know where he gets them. And then he says that the field is 51% stronger. And I know that the only way to make the field stronger is to use thicker wire. But if you use thicker wire, which is a lower gauge number, you need to have the right amount of resistance in the wire, or it's not going to work with people's amplifiers. The wand's going to get too hot in their hand. And that's not what you want. You want pulsed quality gems emitting the correct frequencies going through them, and then the gems give off their auric field, which is what contributes to healing and contributes to the shifting of human consciousness. Because gems have been used in spiritual practice for thousands of years by the Buddhists, by the Hindus, by the ancient Christians, by the ancient Jews and the Hebrews. If you read your Bible, you'll see the use of gems everywhere. You'll see God coming down out of the sky in the book of Enoch, the first prophet, on a sapphire throne. You'll see that God is coming down on a sapphire throne in the book of Ezekiel. And you'll see the breastplate of Aaron with the 12 gems on the breastplate of Aaron. So you'll see how profound the energy and the use of gems are, even in the cubic 1,500-mile cubic city that comes down out of the sky in the end of the book of Revelation. The whole city is made out of gems. So gems are immensely powerful if they're alive, if they're pulsed with correct frequencies and correct intervals of frequencies. And none of this, when David Wong took and told you to upgrade your iPads, your little Galaxy pads, he had to remove all my frequencies and put on his meaningless mumbo jumbo frequencies, because he doesn't legally have the right to use them, because his intention was to steal all my inventions and steal all my intellectual property and steal all my customers and say, surprise, I'm your new teacher now. And David Sereda resigned. He quit. And he gave me the company, which is what he's telling people. And he's also saying that Sharoz Walji is a renegade. And actually, if it wasn't for Sharoz and Pravinder, I would have been so badly destroyed. You can't even imagine, because of their honesty. These two women who are of such purity in their souls that they could recognize that what David Wong, Dennis Wong, Yak Wong was telling them to do was unethical. They were watching him steal my intellectual property. They were watching him rebuild my products and claiming he knew how to do it, and he doesn't. And then he stole, hang on, baby, come on over here. That's right, because you only have $5, and David Wong has the rest of your money. My agreement with David Wong was 50% of the profits were shared after the expenses. And according to my calculations on how many wands he sold, he is hiding over $1.5 million to $2 million in profits. He also raised the prices of the wands without my authorization. I didn't want the price of the wands to go higher until I released my new designs. And my new designs, cooperatively with Chris Paul, the jeweler who makes them, who works so hard to handcraft each wand, are very, very profound. And that one, when we're speaking of the Holy of Holies, the original Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple, using the correct royal cubit inch, gives you a precise measurement. Now, in what's called the Dead Sea Scrolls Temple Scroll, which recently has been proven to have been manufactured as a scroll by some type of technology that couldn't have existed in ancient times. It was not printed with handwritten ink. It is proven to have been printed with some sort of technology. And in the Temple Scroll, God instructs Moses to build a new Holy of Holies of an enormous size. Its size, and I'm not going to give measurements out here today. I will do that with you when I'm ready. But its size in converted to, okay, we will. Its size comes to the precise height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Precisely. I'm talking to 99.99% accuracy. And you have to understand, the finished height of the Great Pyramid today is not resolved better than 99.99%. It's not resolved better than that. So we have two measurements that are so sacred: the height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt resolved, and the Holy of Holies being the exact same measurement. And then the smaller Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple also being an incredibly profound measurement. But we'll do a private webinar so that you can understand the measurements and how precise they are in this case. But I'm giving this as an example because the new wands, level 1, 2, and 3 wands, all come with coil windings that are perfectly reflective of these harmonic measurements. And the reason is a piece of wire is a conductor, and a conductor, therefore, as its length is a wavelength. And a wavelength is the frequency. You see, a frequency is the speed of light divided by the wavelength is the frequency. So the wavelength and the frequency are proportionally the same thing. So when I look at temples, I see them as wavelength cavities, structures, where a frequency builds up at that wavelength in the shape of a square wave or a circular sine wave. But nevertheless, I see them as frequency generators. And why is it that when you cross cultures and religions, you'll see these same incredible frequencies when you do the calculations? And that means that God is a universal God that transcends religions. Why would First Nations Native Americans in Chaco Canyon, which are the early Hopi and the early Zuni people, have a Holy of Holies? Same measurement. I went to the park ranger. I said, do you know you have a Holy of Holies in there? Do you know what this means? I was so excited. I double checked it with a measuring tape and my Leica laser, and I was just coming out of my skin because I said, how did God appear to these people before any white man or woman stepped foot on the soil? And how did they make this? How did they know? And their God is supposedly a different God, but that's just getting caught in the philology of words and how we express the name of God. But their God gave them the instructions to make their sacred temple the same measurement as Solomon's temple. And then if you measure the king and queen's chamber and the Great Pyramid, the king's chamber is the perfect length of the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. It's exactly the same. And again, I'm not going to give the measurements out here today because that's for a different time. So the point is, when you're buying products from DavidSereda's.co now, not .com and not .net, because those sites have been hijacked by the evil emperor, Mr. Wong, um, who has sent videos out claiming that he's the light and I'm the dark. I'm Darth Vader and he is Luke Skywalker. So anyway, his intention, and everyone who knows him, is to take what you have and make as much money as he can for himself. And then he goes on my YouTube channel and he says, I just wanted to help him. I just wanted to help his poor family. We owned this property before I even met him, and he claimed that his sales are what built our property. And yes, they helped for only 2 years, and then the damage he did it was enormous. You know, to build my technology and to be selling my healing devices, the wands and the coils, and now the staffs are brand new. And then to have him steal it is an enormous loss, and there will be an enormous lawsuit. And my family, my uncle is a Superior Court judge in Canada, and my mother is an attorney, and my stepfather was an attorney, and I took law in school, and I got the highest grade in my class in law. And it's funny, when I took law, and this is at grade 12 level, my teacher hated me. He didn't even know who my family was in his own country. He has a bachelor's degree in law, Mr. Ewing at Kitsilano High School. He didn't know my uncle, Superior Court judge, the highest court in his province in Canada. But I was asked to write an essay on a legal subject, and it was submitted to a law professor to grade at UBC, University of British Columbia. And my paper was on capital punishment and reincarnation, and what happens if you don't take people who have criminal minds and transform them. They will reappear in the universe somewhere else in their reincarnated form, and they'll wreak havoc somewhere else. So that we needed to focus more on rehabilitation. And so I wrote this huge thesis on that, and I got the highest mark. And my teacher came up to me, said, you didn't write this, you're a clown. I said, there's no way you could have written this. You know, you goof off in class and you make jokes. There's no way in the world you wrote this. And I said, well, I actually wrote it. And that's my little Astaria there. And so the reason I'm telling you that is that I will be representing myself in court, and I know court procedure, and I'll beat them. And I've beaten people in court before with no lawyer, and I've won and beaten the people with the lawyers in court. And David Wong, thanks to, I can't call him David. He named himself David because he wanted to be me. He was taking all my frequencies, all my products, and now first of all, you should all know this, that there are people who are buying his new crappy wands that look like toys to me. They look like some crazy toy and from a science fiction movie, with cheap fake gems, no tourmaline activated core, and they're not working. And that's because he wanted to impress people with more power. Now, if you want a product with an enormous energy field, my new 7-level coils, the 14-pointed star coils, have broken all records. And it's because of how I make them. They're passing 10 to even peaking at 12,000 milligauss, a few inches away. And I don't measure the surface of the coil because that's going to be reaching over 1 Tesla, but I'm talking about the field. And the previous coils, I taught David Wong how to make, Mr. Wong, how to make all the coils. So he stole all those from me. He stole the gem lasers, he stole the wands, and then he tried to steal my frequencies and put his name on them, but I said, I can see all the frequencies you have, which ones are mine, because I can just look at the wave files. And so if he time remaps my frequencies, he's changed the frequencies, and therefore he's ruined them just to put his name on them. So this guy does not know how to make frequencies. We know that he's stealing somebody else's frequencies, and this other person has accused me of stealing them when I said, did you ever speak to me on the phone? And his name is Don Adams. Don Adams is Doc Stars, and I really respect Don Adams' work. His frequencies are very profound as well, but I never took his frequencies. It was David Wong who stole his frequencies. And then I had a board meeting with David Wong just over a year ago at Christmas time, before this past Christmas, and I said, we can do mini coils and we can plug them into people's phones and they can run my frequencies through the mini coils. And I said, I know a guy who makes them, and his name is Daniel Nunes. So I made the introduction. I thought I was going to have mini coils on my website. David Wong decided to create his own business called Key Coils and run my frequencies on these mini coils and claim it was all his idea. Okay, so he stole that right from under my nose in a board meeting. So that just shows you who this guy is. And we found out yesterday from speaking to Daniel Nunes that David Wong has now informed him that he'll be making his own mini coils, which are a complete ripoff of Daniel Nunes' coils somewhere else, because somebody else can make them cheaper. So he's doing the same thing to the next guy, the next guy, the next woman, the next woman. Anybody who has an idea, he's going to steal it to him better himself. So is that a person you want to buy product from? Because guess who has all the power in the whole world right now? Guess who can change the entire world right now? The customer. The customer has all the power, not the idea. If the customer buys electric cars, we're going to get rid of our dependency on Middle Eastern oil, and we won't have to have our military in the Middle East. If the customer gets informed how profound these microwave towers are that are surrounding us with 4G, 3G, 4G, and 5G generation networks, how profoundly they're adversely affecting human consciousness and human development, then they will get informed to want to have their own transmitter using my technology cooperatively with the team of people that work for me and have been building these devices with me. Then you can set up your own harmonic field and be in control of the frequencies of your own space rather than somebody else mind controlling or imprinting negative frequencies into your consciousness. Because one thing I know about developing frequencies over the years is I have determined what disharmonic numbers are, what frequencies are disruptive to the new human nervous system. And in fact, I had a customer, this is way before I met Mr. Wong, who worked for one of the biggest satellite companies in America out of Seattle, and I won't name that company here for legal reasons, but he said they are broadcasting the internet at frequencies that they know will cause human cancer and living systems. And they're doing this on purpose to reduce the population. And you can see conversely that mental illness has escalated and depression have escalated and suicides have escalated with the advent of these microwave towers. So in America and Canada combined, there's over 250,000 transmitter towers. So I look at them, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings. I see them as the dark towers. And what we're missing is enough of the light towers. So every time you buy a coil and you're transmitting harmonic frequencies, even if you're just healing a local patient, the signal goes out at the speed of light. It's affecting the whole planet. And my goal is to increase the numbers of these devices on the planet running harmonic frequencies and eventually create a network where all of us can transmit the same harmonic frequency at the same time globally and set up global intentions. And this is known as the noosphere. It was discovered by a Jesuit priest named Teilhard de Chardin, whose work really, really affected the mind of Dr. Roger Nelson at Princeton University, who heads the Global Consciousness Project. And Roger Nelson appeared in my film, The Voice, which you can see on Gaia TV. The Voice Part 1 and 2, Quantum Communication Part 1 and 2. Both of my films are on Gaia TV, and I have other titles there as well. So what we're doing, what my goal is, it's not just, I know many of you, when you're as a distributor or as a practitioner, you have people who come to you for personal healing. But one of the things that was happening, like in the early wands that I developed, I remember selling this wand to this gentleman who was trying to heal his wife, but he had arthritis in his fingers, and he was holding the wand on her back with a magnet. And he said suddenly he could move his hands again. He says, "What's going on?" Because I was trying to heal her, and she got healing benefits, and so did he. You see, when you're transmitting, it goes out at the speed of light, so it's affecting the whole planet. Even though the field gets weaker and weaker and weaker with the inverse square law, it's still affecting the whole planet. And the more of these light transmitters we get on the planet, the more we're going to increase our field. And when you apply consciousness to a transmission with your coil or your wand or your staff, you see, the way radio works, how do we get pictures and voices to ride on a train called a radio wave? How do we do it? We pulse modulate the wave. And FM means frequency modulation, and AM radio means amplitude modulation. So you can modulate the amplitude or the frequency. But human intention can ride on a radio wave as consciousness. And I've seen this happen so many times that even now you have living meditation masters that when they go into this divine state, they are getting people to tune in globally, and people can feel this transmission of a master at a distance through the internet, which is radio frequencies. So how does the consciousness component ride on a radio wave? So that's why it's so important what you think magnifies millions of times when you pick up a wand or a staff or a coil. So be careful what you think. Don't turn on these devices when you're in the middle of, or you're still burning from a heated debate. Now, a creative debate is fine. Creative debates are wonderful. We don't all agree, and we all have holographic different perspectives of how things should be. And that's a good thing, because otherwise the world would be very ordinary if we all had the same perspective. It's we have to get out of this idea of everything being either or, right or wrong answers to questions, instead of holographic answers to questions. Holographic answers are, I see it this way, I see it this way, I see it this way, I see it from over here. If 100 people observed a car accident at the same time, they're all going to tell you something different because they all saw it from a different perspective. And is any one of them right or wrong? No, they all are giving us the collective picture of what occurred. So when you get a holographic awareness, you get it from this side or this side at the same time, and this side. So we're getting with my daughter. See, she's doing things that I'm saying. It's really funny how she's doing this. She's really tuned in. This is Astaria. It was born with the star Vega straight above the house at the time of her birth, precisely. And after weeks of rain, the sky cleared, and there was Vega straight above the house at the time of her birth. So what I'm saying to all of you today here is my integrity to, I don't just make up frequencies. David Wong is going to, or Dennis Wong, Yak Wong is going to steal frequencies from people. And then you also have this lack of integrity in his consciousness, which is all just about making money, making money, making money. So he's going to steal everything he can out there to build up his business. And he's going to tell you that, you know, with his beauty filters that he puts on his face when he makes these videos, and he's going to tell you that he wants to be your teacher, and he's a thief. So the customers that go to him, that believe in him, all I can tell you is he's messing around with frequencies that he doesn't know anything about. All of you who got the Galaxy Pad devices, I see this is the other issue, and this is the last issue I want to bring up today, and that is that I never wanted my frequencies or Rife frequencies to exist as MP3s. Because when you're creating an audio file, whether it's frequencies or music, you want your bit depth to be nice and profoundly deep. And MP3 does this. It squishes the bit depth and it loses its holographic quality. Now that doesn't mean there's no benefit. It means you're probably getting 30% of the potential benefit of a full bit depth file. So I've set up a Google Drive where you can take your Galaxy Pad, and I prefer to use Apple devices because Apple devices have better frequency generators. So you can download all my frequencies, you put them in playlists in Windows Media Player if you're using a Galaxy device. If you're using an Apple device, you create new playlists and you name the playlist what the name is on the folder in the Galaxy Drive. So if you see pyramid frequencies, then you label the playlist pyramid frequencies and you load all the full res .wav files, which are universal. WAV files play in an Apple device or a PC device. And that way you have full bit depth for the frequencies that I created. Now, to use Rife frequencies, and Rife frequencies are not, they're now royalty free because the 40 years has expired when Rife created them. And what you use is a frequency generator, and I use the Black Cat systems because it allows you to do multiple tracks, super high quality, at the same time. So you look in the Rife PDF booklet, you look at the name of the illness you want to therapeutically work with, and you enter those frequencies on the multiple tracks, and then you just turn on that track, and with your connections going to your amp and then to your wand, that frequency, full resolution is coming out of your wand or your coil system. And that's what you want, full resolution files. You don't want these little squished MP3 files that are not going to be as effective. Now, I'm not going to say they're not effective at all, but they're nowhere near as effective as the full resolution files are. So you're all going to get access to those. And the other thing I want to tell people is you can take the wand you got, and we will take the wand and we'll upgrade it with the new sacred coil wire length. And if you want a level 2 wand, you get a pure silver plate where the rubies are not silver plated, but pure solid silver. And then you get 2 star coils that are behind the rubies. And those are the length of the height of the staff in a very profound book in the Bible, which I'm not going to name right now, just because I don't know who's listening to this or who will be listening to this when I post it on YouTube. But they're very profound wavelength measurements. And those are made out of solid silver, one of them, and the other one is made out of gold fill wire. And gold fill wire is far deeper than gold plating. Gold plating is not even anywhere near a single millimeter thick of gold. It's insignificant. So the purpose of gold wire is to produce a gold auric field, just like you're going to create a ruby field and a tourmaline field. Now, guess what comes with the level 2 wands now? We have gems on the side of the band of the wand that have amethyst, topaz, and citrine gems. More gems means more gems emitting through the piezoelectric effect field, and those are all real, natural, non-lab grown gems. And then the level 3 wands have over an ounce of real gold in them, over an ounce of real gold, and that is a pure gold disc where the rubies are, a solid gold wire star coil, and a solid gold wire silver coil. And those, because there's over an ounce of real gold in them, those are more expensive. So you're getting true gold auric energy, and the measurements of the conductor wires in the coils are harmonic sacred measurements, none of which Mr. Wong has, nor does he have the rights to, because this is, again, an improvement. So we're still going to offer the level 1 wands, the level 2, and the level 3s. And so if you go to my new website, DavidSereda, SEREDA.co, not .com, but .co, you will see the new website. You'll see that Pravinder does work for me. You'll see that Shiroz does work for me. You'll see who my jewelers are. You'll meet everybody that's working on your products. You'll see they're all made in the United States, and they're all handmade, except I personally make a lot of the coils myself here in Canada. And so that you're getting homemade, very high quality handmade products and truly integral frequencies. So the choice is yours, and also to educate your customers, your potential customers as distributors. You have 5 major markets. You have the people that are looking for protection from the incoming 5G, 4G, and 3G networks, which is really causing cancer and leukemia in many individuals. It's causing depression. It's deharmonizing, deconstructing the harmony of the human nervous system. And then you have people that are looking for the treatment, the alternative treatment of disease, which, as a disclaimer, I have to say that we have no legal scientific proof that rife frequencies or any frequencies can cure disease, but we have non-legal scientific proof that they do. And then we have people that this is one of the most profound aspects of my technology. I'd like you to think of the movie The Matrix, for those of you who have seen it. You see, when you're introducing a song which is built of a series of frequencies from the Pythagorean scale into your nervous system, you're building neural pathways to emotions and feelings and spiritual qualities. Now, we've all been doing this for hundreds of years, but the pyramid scale and all of the different frequencies I offer in my world's largest frequency library, you are building neural pathways to new places in consciousness. And those new places in consciousness give you new creative insights, new dreams, and new visions. And what is the world made of? The world's made of visions and dreams. We dreamed this whole thing up. Everything you see in the world, from a car to a tomato slicer, all started out in somebody's head. So why isn't the world working effectively today? Why do we have so many problems? Because we've reached the maximum potential based on the frequencies admitted to us through our music scale. And the scales and the music and the frequencies that I'm giving you open up new neural pathways to the future. And I'm going to do a whole webinar just on what neural pathways are. And what scientists have discovered is when we're children like this, 0 to 4 years old, first of all, they're not only just pure love, but what they found with children before they go into our education system is they have infinite millions and millions of neural pathways open in their brain, in their nervous system. And the moment they enter narrowband focused education systems, over 90% of those neural pathways shut down, and they only use the ones they need to exist in our civilization. So what about the other 90% or more? We don't know why the God of the prophets and the gods who appeared to the First Nations people and people in cross religions gave them these wavelengths, which are frequencies, to build their temples, because those are functions that open up neural pathways that give us a pathway to telecommunicate telepathically with the creator of the universe to rebuild our creative insight process, which is where everything comes from. Everything comes from there. We used to have a planet filled with pyramids and temples that operated, and today we don't make temples and churches with any of these measurements. I've measured churches with a laser. I've gone to St. Francis Cathedral in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It doesn't matter which church I go to, none of them were made in harmonic proportions from any measurements within the Bible. They don't even have a Holy of Holies in the central part of the cathedral and the churches. And the Gospel of Philip, which was removed by the early church fathers, Jesus clearly states that the Holy of Holies is, his mother was raised in the Holy of Holies, that he is the son of the Holy of Holies, and the Holy of Holies is integral to the resurrection body, the light body. And that he says in Philip that you need to attain the resurrection when you live, because when you die, if you don't, you'll receive nothing. And that he says the Holy of Holies is the key to the resurrection in the Gospel of Philip. Now, why was it removed? Why was the fact that Jesus said in Mark 6:8 that if you forget everything, you can forget everything, but don't forget your staff? Why did he say that? Because the staff was part of the practice of the activation of the light body. And the light body is integral to the healing process that Jesus incited, because he healed from the harmonic fields that he was tapped into, and he had his staff. The earliest paintings of Christ show him as a young man with his staff. So with that, my baby's kind of going nuts. I think she's had enough. She needs me now. And thank you so much for everyone for being here. And we'll come and do this more often. And all my love of my family to all of you. And you can see that this little mouse is really, really full of love. And thank you so much for being here.